question is from Jorge Castillo. Go ahead, Jorge.
Hey, what's up, guys? You guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
I can. How you doing, Jorge?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good, thanks.
Just checking in. How many players have tested positive for the coronavirus, if any, and how many members of the organization? And if you anticipate anybody not being available right away because of it?
I'm sorry, say the last part again?
And do you anticipate anybody not being available starting next week because of it?
Yeah. Obviously, this is a delicate subject and something that, has been front of mind for all of us for the last, 4 months. We have had some people in our organization test positive. None that have resulted in symptoms that have been problematic, but obviously this is front of mind for all of us. And just by trying to handle this in the way that we think best as we're figuring this out and learning as we go. It's very much a personal thing that if any want to share, then obviously it's up to them. But I think from my standpoint, Doc's standpoint, we're not comfortable doing that. As we get into the season, if those things are happening, obviously they're going to have to be handled in a different way, and I just don't know what that is right now. As far as guys being delayed for spring training, I'm not sure. It's definitely possible, but I don't know for sure on that front right now. And as we learn how to communicate on this, we'll obviously do so, but we're kind of learning as we're going right now.
Go ahead, Beth. Sorry.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry about that. I got a couple questions for Dave. Who is going to handle your ball boy duties?
Yeah, you know what, Beth? I don't know that right now. I think that there's obviously we're dealing with kind of the tiering situation and how many guys are tier one and that even have that access, to the clubhouse, let alone the dugout. We don't have to turn that in quite yet. So I think that it might be me. You never know. But I don't know. But right now, obviously, some of our guys that work the clubhouse are obviously in the tier one category. So that certainly makes sense. But I really don't know. But that's probably a safer assumption right now.
Just wanted to get your thoughts on the extra inning rule and whether having that runner on to start out right away. I'm wondering, have you had any feedback from your minor league coaches that may be more used to it than you are dealing with it?
Well, the feedback that I've received, and I don't know what Andrew's heard, is it's been pretty positive actually. And I think that under the situation of guarding against putting players at harm's way, specifically pitchers, with over usage, that certainly helps that. It'll be different, but I still think it's the right way to go, certainly for this year. And as I understand it, it's not going to be that way in the postseason, but for the regular season, I think it makes sense.
And if I could, just one more, Dave. I saw you had some comments yesterday about about your plans for not having a designated hitter. Can you just kind of expound on that and your thinking about doing it by committee?
Oh, well, it's just more, we just are very fortunate with our roster that's very versatile. And our guys, to a man, play both sides of the baseball. So to have that, be locked in on one guy that takes down that role, I think that kind of puts one arm behind your back. So I think that we just have that flexibility. And honestly, Beth, is once the schedule comes out, the pitcher certainly matters, that particular pitcher that day, how guys are feeling after a certain amount of games, all that stuff. But I think that we fit that DH kind of situation as well as any team in baseball, in my opinion.
Next question's from Bill Plunkett. Please unmute and go ahead, Bill.
Yes, I will unmute Juan. Thank you.
Please mute Bill.
We'll set you up for that one. You said it's definitely possible that these positive tests might affect someone's availability for spring training. Are we talking about positive tests among the player group then?
What I was saying is I'm not sure right now, and as we get closer, A, we'll have more insight into that, and B, we'll have, a better roadmap in terms of, how to handle this by factoring in player, staff, front office, whomever, their feedback, also Major League Baseball. Obviously, there's no playbook for this, and, from our standpoint, we want to err on the side of being thoughtful to the people involved, and so we're still trying to navigate this and wrap our arms around it. Obviously, front and center for us is everyone that is involved, their health and safety. And so as we're wrapping our arms around that and as things come up, we'll have a better sense of kind of, how to share that information. Right now we don't. I don't necessarily anticipating it going into the start of spring training. I just don't know. And so as we get closer, we'll know more and figure out, how to communicate that.
And have you decided which day will be the first workout, and what's the testing look like between now and that day?
We're still trying to lock down the testing with CDT, the group who will help administer, and basically looking at having 2 or 3 different days and kind of staggering the intake testing process. The first formal workout is July 3rd. That is set. But as guys come in and get their intake test and it comes back negative, then they can start accessing the facility, along the lines of how we had things set up over the last few weeks, and not as much how it will be starting next week. But we're still trying to figure out the logistics around that. There's a lot we're trying to wrap our arms around right now in a very quick manner. And so, we'll continue to have more to provide as we lock things in place.
I asked Dave this yesterday, so I'll ask you today, Andrew. We've seen a lot of positive tests in a handful of different teams in Florida, Arizona, and then Colorado. Does that stuff give you pause about the wisdom of forging on and going ahead with the season?
I mean, part of the challenge here is there are a lot of unknowns. I think there's no question we're going to have a decent number of positive tests in spring training in the season. And to me, it's much more about how quick we are to respond to that, the treatment options, the quarantining part of it, making sure it doesn't spread among the group. And to the extent that we can contain it, and we have really good health and safety protocols in place, I think it's something that collectively as a group, everyone working together, I think it's something we can manage. But, again, I think anyone that pretends like they can sit here today and tell you exactly how things are going to play out, I don't subscribe to that. I don't agree with it. And there's a lot we don't know. And a lot of our conversations internally has just been about staying on our toes and staying nimble and trying to communicate our way through everything, read and react as things pop up. And that's our plan. And as we continue to learn more, we'll get smarter with how we do things.
Alden, please unmute. Go ahead, Alden.
Hey guys, thanks for doing this. You can hear me, right?
Yes, sir.
Perfectly.
This question is more for Dave because he might be more directly involved with this. Just kind of piggybacking off what Andrew was talking about, how important, Dave, do you think it's going to be for guys to just sort of self-police this season? Making sure that they're abiding by all the protocol when they're not at the facility, when you guys are on the road and they're kind of on their own. And I know it's early, but have you figured out any sort of strategy or system to sort of keep these guys accountable when they're not in your facility?
I think the strategy is being upfront and honest. I think I can speak to the organization. It's like from the outset, we've been very diligent about educating ourselves, keeping our guys as safe and as educated, as informed as possible. I have a lot of confidence in our players, coaches, and people that are going to be in the tier 1 and tier 2 that, anyone is could be affected, and that potential harm could affect, a lot of other people. So certainly anything can happen when you are even being cautious. But I think that just continuing to talk about how important it is to take this seriously, and the challenge all in is that, which obviously is at the forefront of everyone's mind, but then to still go out there and prepare to play Major League Baseball. So I think the team that can handle that the best and balance it is going to have the most success.
Thanks.
Next question's from Tim Brown. Tim Brown, go ahead.
How's it going, fellas?
What's up, TV?
I want to circle back to the Bat Boy. I'm pretty sure Beth was volunteering. So
It sounded that way.
you can just write that down. I'm curious if either of you have had conversations with potential opt-outs. And also sort of anything that's in place for coaches, staffers, especially those who are potentially high risk in terms of doing their jobs or not doing their jobs, just to keep them safe.
Yeah, I think both of us should probably address this. From my standpoint, this is a very personal decision and matter. And we want people to feel comfortable to bring up if they're concerned or scared or whatever the case may be. We want to have those conversations with staff, with players. We've definitely had conversations with a few players that are concerned, not necessarily rising to the level of opting out, but just as we see, with people in our own lives who we talk to, and, they kind of all fall on a continuum, and, our clubhouse, our staff, our front office is not that different. And so, for the people that are really concerned, we want to help and be around and try to, help, with what is a really personal decision. So I think we'll learn more about this over the weekend and next week. But obviously we would welcome those conversations with any players and or staff.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's like, as far as like on the day-to-day, I think there's going to be a lot put on players, essentially, and I say that because to do their own homework, there's going to be virtual meetings, there's going to be stuff kind of on computers and conversations by way of phone or text. The training staff and strength and conditioning, you're just not going to have that, the liberties that we've had in the past to work with players and put your hands on players all the time. So I think there's going to be concessions made both ways. But I think that with Major League Baseball kind of limiting, the amount of people, the time in the clubhouse, all that stuff lends itself to being more safe. And but like Andrew said, any individual person's thoughts, concerns, we need to hear them, want to hear them, and we'll kind of support anything they feel.
Sorry. Next question's from Pedro Mora. Go ahead, Pedro.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Pedro.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Cool. So I wanted to ask what Tim was going to ask, but to follow up, I guess, outside of just opting out, how would you characterize your player? I know this is a tough question because they're individuals, but in general, how are your players feeling about coming back to a season? I mean, there have already been several players across Major League Baseball quoted as saying that they have significant trepidation about it. Where do you stand in general about like the idea that some of this season might be counseling during the season and making sure that guys are continually comfortable, not just on July 3rd, but, in August, September, and into October? This has never really been part of your job description, but I imagine that it already has become it. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that this is, like you said it. This is something that none of us have experienced. And I haven't talked to, I don't think Andrew and I collectively have talked to every player on the roster yet. We plan on getting on a Zoom call with these guys the next couple of days. And I would get more information individually from these guys. But I think that it's a day-to-day thing. There's constant conversation. Things are going to come up. People might be affected more than others. So it's just conversations that we got to take it day by day. And everyone is obviously looks at it a little bit differently.
Next question's from Jim Alexander. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, I think I unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can, perfectly.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a baseball question. Your roster is built for 162 games. We know the depth and everything. A trophy sprint like this, 60 games, what kind of effect is that going to have, and how do you kind of adjust to that, factoring in the fact that you're going to have a DH, so you're going to have a 10-man lineup on any given day? I guess, Dave, I'll go ahead and ask you, and then Andrew, you can chime in.
Sure. Well, I think that the DH, you said it. I mean, that just allows us to tap into our depth on the position player side. There's still, as each game moves on, we have a bench that is more than capable to take on a certain matchup that we see as beneficial. On the pitching side, you just don't know where guys are going to be built up. So to be able to tap into the depth on that side of things makes sense. So I think that, we've always talked about the depth of the Dodgers over 162, but I think our depth plays just as important in a 60-game sprint, in my opinion. And Andrew can chime in.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's all relative, and we're going to be playing the same number of games as our competitors. We do feel like the depth will help us throughout the season. Also in the beginning when we have 30 guys, and just how little we will lose night to night if something pops up or we have an injury or some fatigue of being able to insert different guys in there. So I think the most important thing, and we couldn't feel more confident about it, is our players' mindset. And we've seen it over the last couple of years, and so much of the culture change that's happened with Doc and the coaches is how focused and committed our players are to winning that night, like that pitch, that at bat. And so I think, that's not going to be any different. And to the extent with our talent and that mindset, we feel really good about what's possible from that.
Now, Andrew, with the taxi squad situation, is it going to be similar to like a AAA situation where you can call guys up and send it back down, or are there some other rules in play there that limit what you can do?
Yeah, no, I think it's up to 3 guys, one of whom needs to be a catcher. And I think a lot will just depend on, where we're at that time, what our roster looks like. I imagine there's going to be times where we'll want to carry a few more pitchers than we otherwise would. There may be times where we have a longer stretch with more off days where it's easier for us to, carry a few more position players. And so depending on what the composition of our roster is will help determine, the taxi players that we carry with us. And I think the most important part is about having them travel with you when you're going somewhere that's a plane ride away, to not rely on commercial air travel. And so that's the thing where we'll have to be mindful and thoughtful of before a trip of who are the 3 players that we want to bring for that, for that road trip. Other than that, I think we can kind of read and react day to day.
But there's not a limit in terms of, you bring up 3 guys, you could send them back down and bring up 3 more guys? Is it?
Well, but if you're on a road trip, you can't because of the commercial air travel.
Right.
That's why they want you to bring 3.
Okay.
Next question's from Eric Steven. Go ahead, Eric.
Hey guys, an alternate training site yet? And then, I guess related to that, of the guys who are like outside of the 60 on your player pool, is there going to be a time when those people will be able to train and play? I'm assuming at Camelback Ranch, or is that sort of not been?
The beginning part of your question, can you ask that again? Were you asking about the alternate site where it'll be?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, we're finalizing that right now. My full expectation is that we will start at USC, and then at some point when students start potentially arriving on campus, we're looking into most likely going to Rancho at that point in time. But we're still kind of working out those final details. And as far as guys outside the 60, we don't know yet. Obviously, a lot will depend on how things play out over the next 1 to 2 to 3 months. And so our thought process in putting together the 60-man is trying to balance, whether or not this might be the only reps that some of our prospects get this year. But there's just a lot that's up in the air, as you would imagine.
Next question is from Kurt Sandoval. Go ahead, Kurt.
Hey, good to see both of you guys. I was wondering if you guys could just explain in the past 3 weeks, the roller coaster ride you've been on, watching the negotiations go back and forth, and transitioning into that for you, Andrew. You'd mentioned several times about there's a lot to get done in a short period of time. If you could expand on that, what's your greatest challenge there?
You can start.
Yeah, you want to start, Doc? You want me to start?
You start.
Yeah, the last 3 weeks have been quite the roller coaster, and from our standpoint, obviously, what we wanted to do was get back on the field. We felt incredibly good about our squad, in early March, and then got to a point where we hit pause on that for a little while, and Doc and I were kind of itching to get things back going, and A, we're not that patient, and B, we had no control over it, and so we were kind of in the cheap seats, just cheering for this outcome, for us to get a return to play plan in place, and with that there are tons of logistical hurdles and challenges, and including satellite sites and staff and clubhouse, how that's going to work at the satellite site, and meals. There are a lot of logistical challenges in general if you're doing something this quickly, but then when you layer on the health and safety part of it, and trying to make sure that that's front and center in everything you do, it just adds more complexity, and we have a short time to do it. But again, we'd much rather be going through this fire drill than sitting around just wondering when and if. So we'll take this, and we're excited about getting going.
I think for me, Andrew nailed it as far as really understanding what it has taken to kind of keep this thing moving forward. And I personally can't give enough credit to Ron Porterfield and Neil Ramp, the head trainer. Both guys have just done so much about educating and keeping this thing moving forward. I was just hopeful that a decision would be made, an agreement would be had. And I think, like Andrew said, for us, we get very antsy and we want to play baseball, but we realized very quickly it was out of our hands. There's nothing we can do. So I think for me personally, just trying to stay connected to the players and coaches, was kind of the thing I wanted to make sure we did through this whole process.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Sorry, next question's from Liz. Go ahead, Liz.
Hey, hi guys, nice to see you. Hey, Dave. Thanks. Dave, can you, this is such a complicated situation, and just listening to you too, I'm wondering what are your emotions as you head into this, now that you know that you're actually going to get out there and play?
I think it's to be honest, Liz, it's treading lightly and trying to be nimble. And I say that because things are bound to change, and it's going to be very unpredictable. So to be open to that, being sensitive to different players' mindsets and where they're at, emotions. So I think that I'm excited to get going, but I think that, you know, where normally we're just focused, the scope is a lot more finite, and I think that, you know, rightfully so, it's a little bit more wider, our lens, our you know, so I think that, I guess, excited but treading lightly and yeah, carefully.
Next question's from Claudia. Go ahead, Claudia.
Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
Claudia.
Yes. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Claudia.
Hello, Andrew. So,
Hi, Claudia.
this is going back to where we left off nearly a couple months ago. But when the pandemic before started, did you have a close idea of your final roster, and do you feel it will change a lot in this couple of weeks of spring training? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. You want to take that, Andrew, or you want me?
Yeah, I mean, we both can. I mean, I think part of it that will definitely change is the fact that we'll have 30 guys to start. So that'll add 4 additional players. You know, in spring training, as we were getting in those last couple of weeks, we weren't sure exactly whether Jock was going to be ready opening day, and you know, now we're in a pretty good spot with all of our guys, and so I'm sure it'll change a little bit, but also so much will come from where our starters are as we get going, how built up they are, to kind of figure out the interplay between how many pitchers versus position players that we'll kind of take the next 3-4 weeks to wrap our arms around and try to put, you know, the best 30-man roster we can, coupled with, you know, kind of protection all around that we feel good about.
All right, next question from Margaret. Go ahead, Margaret.
Hi, Dave.
Hi, Margaret.
How's Eiko-san?
Eiko-san is doing well. She's staying busy as she can. Thank you for asking.
That's good to know. I'm wondering, are you going to require facial masks in the dugouts like they do in Asia?
Andrew, why don't you tackle that one? You probably know.
I think it's part of the protocols. I think it is something that non-players, and again, we're still wrapping our arms around, you know, the 108-page manual and the subsequent things that have come out even earlier today. But my sense is that is part of, but don't hold me to it.
Arigato.
Gozaimasu.
Sarah.
Japanese.
Well done.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Hey guys, so with the All-Star games, like that's basically out of the question for this year, or if anything does happen to be in the form that we know it. Do you have any knowledge yet of what the plan might be to make up for that maybe in later years?
We're still awaiting definitive word from Major League Baseball. I think once we get the schedule for this year, I think there will be a lot of clarity on that. I don't really know at this point. That's something that we're still waiting for word from MLB.
Thank you.
All right. Dave Vassek one more time. Go ahead, Dave.
Dave, I'm curious on the health side of things. Have you consulted with any of your physicians about the risk that you may or may not be taking by managing this season?
So I talked to Neil Ramp, our head trainer, who talked to Dr. Plose, and the word that I got is that me, as a former cancer survivor, is not at any higher risk than anyone else. So obviously, knowing my history, I'm still very aware of it. But I feel very confident in going back, though, yes.
Did you ever have any pause?
Oh, I'm sorry, keep going.
What's that, Dave?
Did you have any pause about what your risk was and whether or not you wanted to go through with this?
Before I got to the pause, Dave, I just try to, and this is, you're looking at, 2 months back, 3 months back, as I was just waiting to get more information. And from what I understand, people with prior cancer history haven't been prone to be at higher risk. So, and that's what I know. So the pause really dissipated, if there was any at all, as I've got more information.
Thank you.
Dave, great work figuring out how to unmute.
It was a challenge.
I got another question from Jorge. Go ahead, Jorge.
All right, what's up, guys? First of all, Andrew, how do you anticipate filling out this player pool? Do you maybe see yourself, you guys maybe giving a chance to, guys who maybe don't have a crack in the major leagues, just kind of train with big leaguers and keep training and not sort of take a step back in player development, or will you have guys you think are major league ready?
I mean, I think it's a balance between all of that. I mean, I guess first and foremost, we don't necessarily, as deep as we are and as excited as we are about, our 26-man, our 40-man, the prospects behind it, we don't have 60 guys that we feel like could step in and help us win a major league game this year. So we're going to try to make sure we balance depth and then figuring out, which of our prospects, either need reps or pitchers that, could really use some increase in workload, and just try to balance to make sure that we're protected and covered where we need to be, but also a really good experience for some of our prospects. So we're still working through that. Even on Sunday, I'm not sure that we're going to, lay out all 60 names. We may stagger it a little bit and just buy some time and learn more and figure out which way we want to go with different things. So I wouldn't anticipate us going all the way to 60 on Sunday.
Another one here. Do you guys have any idea how they're going to enforce no spitting, no high fives, any of that stuff?
I do not.
I don't.
What should they do?
We've been bogged. I don't know.
Your guess is as good as ours.
And lastly, are you guys excited to face the Astros?
Sure. Yeah. Our standpoint, we talked about this a lot in spring training. It's human nature to go back and relive and think about 2017. It just couldn't be less productive at this point in time. And so I think from our standpoint, they're a good, talented team. It's about beating them in 2020, and it's the only thing we can kind of control at this point, and it's where our energy is best spent.
Thank you.
Next question's from Carrie. Go ahead, Carrie.
Hi, guys.
Take care.
Do you guys? I realize that you get plans are still being made, but do you guys have an idea what training camp will look like? Is it kind of this ramp up period and then eventually nine inning inter-squad games at the stadium?
Yeah, I think that, getting the guys there, understanding that we have a short, quick ramp up on the 3rd, get going. We really are still trying to understand all the protocols, Carrie, as far as, if it's got to be staggered, how staggered it has to be or can be, needs to be. Pitchers versus catchers versus just position players. So we really don't know, but I do envision a lot of live batting practices because you can't count on the back end of games, exhibition games, or let alone spring training games, which are obviously very unlikely. So the inter squads, the live BPs, I think there's a lot of that probably going to be had.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I loved the pregnant pause before answering the Astros question. That was impressive.
I just wasn't sure who was going to take it.
Oh, I wasn't going to answer it.
Yeah, I bet that's what it was.
It was a game of chicken. I lost.
You mentioned Jock. Any injuries that have come up or gone away during this 3 months?
I think we're in a really good spot heading into spring training. Doc?
Yeah, I think that you mentioned Jock earlier, and I think that right now, again, we don't know as far as the health piece. I think that we feel very confident as we start spring training with our guys. But again, there's still that, how much volume have they taken on up until this point? So once we get to spring training, on the 3rd, we'll certainly know more. But I do feel that once the season starts, we'll have the 30 guys ready where they need to be.
I'm trying to remember back to spring training. I think Jimmy Nelson might have been an issue when things ended. Where does he stand?
He's out here now, and we'll know a lot more at the end of this week, into the weekend, and we'll have a feel for, whether he'll be a full go or not on Friday. We're not sure at this moment.
What has his activity level been? Is he throwing?
He's been going bullpens.
That's it for me. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone, for joining. Thanks, Doc. Thanks, Dave. Or thanks, Andrew. Sorry.
All right. Thanks, Juan.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for moderating, Juan. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.